name is Bina Maseno. I serve as the Executive Director, Badili Africa. Please help me appreciate the Badili Africa team for putting this together. I definitely can't take all the credit. The team behind Badili Africa is amazing, so I really appreciate them for all the work they have done, and help me appreciate our partner, Heinrich Bo, for supporting this initiative. Thank you so much. So I'll just briefly give you a brief background of why we are here today and today's particular event. Then we'll usher the team to the exhibition. And after the exhibition, we'll gather back here for the premiere of the documentary, then have a bit of an interactive conversation, and then we call it a day. So we are hoping it can be short and sweet today, right? On a Thursday. I know for some of you, maybe the weekend has started. But what has been the journey of Badili Africa? So for some of you, I have interacted with you. For the rest of you, maybe it's the first time you're interacting with Badili Africa. I ran for office when I was 22 years old. And I know I have told this story before. And it came at a cost, number one. I always tell people, as someone who's grown up in the informal settlement of Kayole, and as someone who it has taken the village to literally raise me up and support my education all through. So when I was in campus, after I had gotten the support to join university, in my first year, we were warming up for general election. That was in 2013. We were warming up for the general election for 2013, so in 2012. And I took a break to jump into the politics of the day. And needless to say, that's how I lost my scholarship. Because at the time, after toiling to gather resources, it was somehow perceived that I didn't understand how important my education was to abandon it to get into the murky waters of politics. And you know how politics is, you can't tell how things will be. But then something stood out for me while I was campaigning. Because number one, I could barely see young women below 25 years engaging in party politics. We know how party politics are one of the biggest determinants of whether you're going to occupy office or not in this country. So in the political party interactions, I could barely see young women. And even when we go for rallies, I could barely see young women. And even when you check online, and even today, just today, if you know some of the political commentators or even the political bloggers, if you look at a post they've put up today, if it's a political post, just scan the comments. You'll barely see young women commenting on those posts. Actually, you can barely see women commenting on political posts, okay? And I think that is what inspired the journey for Badili Africa. So we began asking ourselves, how then do we get young women to start understanding how politics affects them? Research has been done in this country that the most disenfranchised lot is young women between the age of 18 and 25. That's the most disillusioned and disenfranchised lot in this country. And to think that they make the bulk of the youth population, okay? So if you're talking about young people, are 70% in this country, imagine young women make the bulk of that number. And we've begun asking ourselves, how then do we come up with ways of doing civic education in a way that invites the person who's most left behind to engage? So we began having conversations and gathering people in spaces like this, and still realized, even when we gather people in spaces like this, young women still don't show up. The people who show up even in universities are people who are doing political science or who just care about international relations. And then we began having glam sessions, telling young women you can look good and understand politics. So we began ensuring that we have a makeup artist in our civic dialogues. And we started seeing women show up, women who would ideally not even think that is their space, but they've come because they're saying, oh, there's a makeup artist there, oh, I can look good after I sit in this session, you see? And telling them, listen, you don't have to look a certain way to be heard, okay? Because also how the political scene is structured, it's like beauty and intelligence are mutually exclusive. It's like they cannot both exist together. And listen, when we're in our 20s, We want to look good, right? I don't know about you, but I know I used to struggle with self-esteem issues in my early 20s when I was in campus. And we decided to tap into that and say, you know what? We can actually merge fashion, beauty, and political conversations. We need to change how we look at people who are engaging in political spaces. And we began using fashion and beauty as a strategy to even show how gender-based violence is a key deterrent to women participating in leadership positions, and why we need to listen, and why many people are left behind because of some of these barriers. So that has been one of the key strategies we are using. And today, even as you walk around the exhibition, I think you're going to see how we are also trying to use art, fashion, and beauty to ensure that we do not re-stigmatize survivors of gender-based violence. One thing we're trying to stay away from is to ensure that anytime we're working with survivors, we don't bring them in front here to tell their story for the 1,000th time. You can imagine taking someone down memory lane for like 100 and, like hundreds and hundreds of time, right? So what we do, we recreate their stories through art. So all the stories we collect of survivors at Badili Africa, we recreate those stories through art. And in every gathering like this, we have the same survivors that we work with in the room, but you can recognize them. And we don't want you to recognize them. We want you to recognize with their struggle and how access to justice is still a challenge in this country, and how the burden of proof is still a big, big challenge. And to just share a small anecdote, some time back I was looking for an office for Badili Africa. And I was in one of the buildings, and I was standing on queue, waiting to be served. So the lady served me, and then she's like, oh, I think you can check our co-working space. I said, I'm glad to. And there was a gentleman behind me. And I thought the gentleman is looking for the same services, just like me, because I'm trying to check out their co-working space. And let me tell you, I can't even tell you the size of that gentleman, because I cannot even see anyone who's as huge and, like masculine as that guy. The moment the lady said, can I show you the space, is the moment this guy just came from behind me, grabbed that lady, banged her head against the wall, picked her phone, picked her purse, and said, you're following me and you're taking me to my child. So for a moment, I didn't even know what to do. So I started screaming, because I'm just thinking, the two of us might actually die here, because it's just the two of us, and you can see. But then let me tell you, I look tall today because of heels, okay? I'm like, this guy can actually literally like grab both of us. So I started screaming. The soldier came up, said, what is wrong? Meanwhile, this guy is like holding this chick, kama karatasi, It's like, you're taking me to my son. So I'm trying to tell him what is wrong, trying to push him. And then this chick is screaming, is just like, no, he's going to hurt you. He's going to hurt you. Leave him alone. He always does this. I'm like, what? So they called the manager of that particular co-working space. So the manager comes and is like, what is wrong? Can we enter my boardroom? He's like, no, this person is taking me to my son. He's just like, listen, there's a way we can handle this situation. So they enter the boardroom, and in the, meanwhile, I'm with this chick. I'm so shaken. I hug her. I'm like, my God, are you okay? Do we rush to the hospital? Because for me, I'm thinking that bang, something literally is wrong. And she says, I've tried to get a restraining order. This is like the 4th time this man has come to my working space. I tell her, have you reported this case? She's like, no, I have not reported. I'm like, why haven't you reported? She keeps quiet. I said, can we at least just report this case, if this is the 4th time? Because this restraining order, it's actually the owner of that place who got it. I'm like, have you? And then she says, I will. So when the owner of this building comes out, I say, I'm only asking you, usaidie msichana asikose kazi, usimvute kazi. And then the owner is like, oh, this woman is going to cost me a lot. I said, tafadhali tu, just help her not to lose her job, because the next thing, you might be called for her burial. So she says she's going to actually report that case on a Friday. The gentleman gives her permission to go report on Friday. On Friday at around 4, she calls me. She says, Madam, nilienda kureport kesi hapa Central, and they are saying they need a witness. Okay. And I'm like, what do you mean you need a witness? You know, like, you have marks, like literally, you know, wakasema no wanahitaji witness. And that Friday, I wasn't there. So it's forcing me to be with her the next day, very early in the morning. And I kept on asking myself, what if I wasn't there that day when that incident was happening? What if it was happening at home? I had to cancel everything on a Saturday so as we can report that case. So I knew I have to cancel like 4 hours, because you guys, you know, when you go to the police station, you can't even tell. I had to cancel 4 hours because they're saying they need a witness. And half the time we don't even have witnesses when we're in our bedrooms. When we are at home, we don't have witnesses. So you can imagine having to bring that survivor here to retell her story again of what happened that day. And that is why we use art to tell her story. So we work with our survivors. And when we bring decision makers in rooms like this, it's because we want them, when they watch our art, to also reflect on it. Reflect on access to justice. And that is what we are going to experience today. And doing this work has taken partners who believe in radical ideas, who believe in risk-taking when it comes to new ideas. And I thank all the partners who are in the room today. And right about now, please help me welcome the partner who supported this event, and also a good friend from Heinrich Ball Foundation. Help me welcome Maureen.
I'll start with why this project. I think as a woman or a gender minority in Nairobi right now, I know we see people say the world hates women, but I feel like he is always at the top of mind. I'm sure I'm not the only one who experiences that. Before you leave your house, you're always questioning, where am I going? What should I wear? What time of day it is? And it's not because you don't know that you have the ability to choose those things for yourselves, but it's because you're not in control of the external environment within which you're walking into. And I think it's a very unfair burden that we carry every day. Every moment of the day, every second of the day, you're consistently at the back of your mind, always thinking about your safety. And you're always thinking about your safety because as a society, we have normalized violence against women, girls, and other gender minority groups. It's like the violence meted out to you is almost a given. In the situation Bina has just described, that man was let in through security. That man signed at the front office. That man felt he has the audacity to attack another human being, knowing very well there are no consequences to his actions. And I think when we don't speak up, when you don't say anything about it, we keep perpetuating that violence and make it okay for people to think that the actions of someone like that are okay, which we all know is not. At HBS, we are Heinrich Ball Foundation. Our offices are in Westlands, and our work focuses a lot on democracy work, democracy for everybody. Our gender portfolio, for example, supports a lot of work for the feminist space, supports a lot of work for the LGBTQI space, supports a lot of work for civic organizations. And we believe that the work is not dictated by us. The work is dictated by the partner. And our support to Badili has got nothing to do with our thoughts or our ideas. The ideologies do match up and align with what we believe as an organization. But we also believe in the work that Badili does because it speaks for itself. And I don't have much to add on to that, just to welcome you all for being here. Thank you for the team at Badili for putting this together, and we look forward to the exhibition. Enjoy the rest of the day.
People who are shaping our political landscape right now, that's where they began their journey. And we're not having as many young women run for student government presidents in this country. And that concerns us because if we are having people leave the university space and jump right into the political space, and we're not having as many young women understand how to influence policies of their student government, because student governments have budgets, right? And that is where we're also doing our programming in the university spaces, especially in the public university spaces, to try and ensure that young women are engaging actively in the leadership spaces. So some of the stories of the barriers and how the terrain looks like. There's a listening booth. Feel free to also listen to some of the stories, even as we interact with the art we have today. So we can just, I think, leave through that entrance, and then when you're done, you can either take a pause there, or we can gather back here again. I think the microphone can be heard from the other side. There'll be maybe more instructions, then we can gather back here and reflect on what we are learning, or what we are internalizing or soaking in. Sounds like a plan? Randomly, for you?
I'd say for me, it's the GBV and religion, because some leaders as the final say, but they might be perpetrators of GBV.
My name is Mary, and I look at GBV and religion, and it sparks my attention. As a survivor, I was raised in a very conservative environment. Allow me to share. So when I left high school, I'm a mom, of course a single mom. I came to Nairobi. Nobody told me about SGBV or the consequences. And being raised in a church, the only thing we were taught is that if anything bad happens to you, it's because of Satan. And if you are a victim, it's your fault, because you have to repent, and you also have to pray and fast. So when I was raped, that's exactly what I did. I did not go to report, because I was raised to believe it's Satan's fault that this happened to me. And that is one way religion plays a role in victimizing survivors and not having this conversation in religious spaces. And when I got pregnant from the ordeal, I was stood up in church, and I was to tell everybody how I was to serve as an example to every other young girl who was going out there and having sex, and I was a sinner. So religion really affected me. I had to step out of church for like 8 years because I did not move on from how I was suffering as a victim. So religion has a lot to play when it has to support survivors and even speak about the incidences of SGBV that might happen to even their followers in church. So my space is here, and yeah, that's it.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for that, and thank you so much. So for you, it's religion and gender-based violence. That's what stands out for you. Okay, we'll just take the last two comments, even as we step out. What stood out for you? What image stood out for you, and why?
Hello. I think what stood out to me most is the consent images. The consent images, because I think a lot of us have different understandings of what consent is. You know, sometimes people don't understand you can give consent and take away consent. And so you might agree to certain acts, and halfway you don't want to do it anymore, and someone's wondering, what do you mean? You already said yes. And so I think consent shouldn't be, it can be whatever you want it to be, but for me, I don't think it should be transactional. You should wholly agree and wholly say yes. And that and her picture and her story really stood out to me, because you should be able to drink however much, wear whatever you want to wear, and be whoever you are. And that's not consent. Consent is verbal, consent is yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope we are learning something even from what she's saying, that what stood out for her is the image for consent. And more importantly, is that you can take your consent back. That you know, someone doesn't have to take advantage of you because you're drunk and use that as a reason, right? You can take your consent back. What stood out for you? And why?
Okay, so I had a chance to listen to one of the videos involving female students who are vying for office. And for me, I know image is important, but what does how you look have to do with what you can offer in leadership? So there was a young lady who was talking about that they needed to look a certain way so that they can run for office. How does how I look matter in regards to, in comparison with what I can offer people with my thoughts, my heart, and my experience? So I think if anything, we should, and that's some kind of emotional abuse in a way. So I think that's something that would need to be addressed, yeah.
Thank you so much. Like, you don't have to look a certain way to actually engage in leadership processes. And I want to bring in two people, but first of all, I want to hear from Miss Gina Mutune, the creator behind the images, when it comes to just translating the survivor's story now to this art that you're seeing, you know. And just when we were sending the stories to her, we're like, these are the stories that survivors have written. How do we tell them through art, you see? Gina, what stood out for you? And why is this so important to you?
It's a cliche, but you stand out for me. I know you didn't expect this, but many of you are like, oh, now it's a social house gig, this Bina. But I've seen Bina, I've met her when she started this vision. I've seen her in Kayole burning, getting girls from the hood, with no clothes, asking her friends to come and bring clothes so that they can have a fashion show, so that she can speak about the value of these women in the community, because the women were being threatened. This is in a shack, it was hot. This is about 7 years ago or something. And so for me, her consistency in little things and in big things, that really stands out for me. In the art, what stands out for me is your neighbor's keeper, because I feel we all know someone who's going through gender-based violence, and we're quiet about it. We know the house in the apartment that beef starts, and everyone goes like, madam, I'm not stepping out. You're not sure. What happens to two people who sleep under one blanket is their problem. Or you notice your friend who comes with a mark. You know this thing. I think if we were active citizens, if we were active, a lot of the people we are losing to gender-based violence would not die if we were just a little bit nosy in a good way. If we just stood, if we came out of our houses when we had the screens and said, someone's humanity matters. It's a private matter, but you don't have to kill someone. So I think for me, the neighbor's keeper is really key, because if we were active neighbors, half of these people that we're losing, we would not lose them. Because usually a gender-based violence victim is exposed to someone. So that for me stands out.
Thank you so much, Gina. Especially that last comment that you're saying, when people say, hey, maneno ya watu wawili, that's what we always hear, sindio? Maneno ya watu wawili, and then the next thing, you're being interviewed about your neighbor, and we see that on TV all the time. Or we used to hear them fight. You know, we hear those stories every other day. And it's so sad that it's affecting the most vulnerable in our society. Caro, I want to bring you in, because I also remember when we were trying to also sit down and say, how do we tell this story? And I know you're also very big on trying to not re-stigmatize survivors, right? And how do we even protect survivors? Why is this important to you?
Thank you, Bina. Good morning to you all. So I'll start by telling you a very brief story of how this began. We had a conversation with Bina, and we were talking about gender-based violence. Like, everybody talks about gender-based violence. It's something everybody knows about it. Everybody talks about it. There's so much that is happening about gender-based violence, but really nobody speaks about it. You know, we speak about it in the shadows with our friends when we are venting, but nobody really talks about it. And then we had a meeting with young students in universities, and Bina and I we could not have lunch because it was painful to imagine that the same conversation that our mothers are having, the same conversations that we are having, are the same conversations that younger people, younger girls are having. Not to say that men do not experience gender-based violence, but it was very, very painful for us. And we were asking ourselves, why is nobody really talking about gender-based violence? And the idea behind Visualize was to show you that the same people every single morning, because I remember Bina telling me a story, you are doing makeup and somebody comes in the morning before they go to work to have their makeup done because they're trying to cover bruises. And during the day, they're looking okay. You wouldn't tell that this person has been battered. You wouldn't tell that this person has gone through assault because we have to hide it. You have to appear okay for people to respect you at your workplace. It is time, and time has come when we all need to show the face of GBV, the face of violence. Every one of us has been affected in one way or another, somebody you know, or it has happened to you. So this, for me, is an inspiration of saying these are people who look normal, who look okay, who are people, but gender-based violence is key to them. So when we start speaking about it, when we stop hiding, when we stop making it appear okay, then do we start addressing the problem that is gender-based violence. And that for me is why I'm happy for Badili Africa, because Badili Africa is taking a step by not just talking about gender-based violence, but putting a face to gender-based violence. So thank you very much for coming to the exhibition today. I really hope after the day today, we are all going to have this conversation, not with our friends, not venting, not silently, not condemning, not judging, speaking about the problem as is and showing the faces of the problem. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, I have a friend, and most of the time, when I also cannot speak up, when I'm a neighbor's keeper, like, you know, when I'm not being a very good neighbor, actually, I think I am being a good neighbor because sometimes I don't speak up, but I call the right person to help me with my neighbors. And one such person who's here in the room is Njeri. I have called Njeri in the middle of the night. I'm like, you have to save this person. You know, I'm standing here, like I even know Sikime's number by the offhead. Literally, you know, I've called at night. I'm like, you have to save this person. Njeri, what stood out for you? And then the hashtag of the day is the silenced young woman. The hashtag of the day is the silenced young woman. Please share your thoughts. Share what you're learning. Share what image stood out for you on the online platform as we go to the other side after Njeri. What stood out for you and why?
My name is Njeri Megwe. I work for an organization known as Usikimie, and based violence. The image that really stood out for me was that one over there, and which depicted violence against minorities. Most of us know GBV. Most of us know about GBV and what GBV looks like for majority of us, but most of us ignore, even in words and in ways in which we express as I said, that image really stood out for me. And the reason it stood out for me is because most of us ignore violence against minorities because they are not us, so it doesn't really matter. It's not important to us. Most of us will look at violence against minority and disguise it as we all sin differently. You know, for the people who feel like they're woke, they will say we sin differently. But that is also violence against people who are choosing to live their truth. And we will be like, it's none of my business. They chose to be like that. And so we ourselves become perpetrators that inflict violence on people who do not even have a voice to stand and to speak for themselves. The other thing that stood for me is consent and how important consent is. Because the minute somebody says no or acts in a manner that is likely to say no, all of us, sometimes we're like, but alienda Naivasha. she was party to it. And so what did she think when she was going to Naivasha with them? What did she think was going to happen? That removes the ability for you to say no or yes. And consent, non-consensual sex is rape. That simple. If I say no, it is no. Whether I went with you to Naivasha, whether you took me for a holiday to Paris, but it came to the fact that I did not want to have sex with you, and I said no. No means no. And that is a very important thing, and that is a takeaway that people need to understand, that the minute I say no, consent has been withdrawn, and once you cross the boundary of consent, we're looking at non-consensual. There's nothing like non-consensual sex. Non-consensual sex is rape. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Shiki wanted to say something. Shiki is actually one of the models who did the Neighbor's Keeper. This is actually Shiki. Even when she really brought out the religion and sexual and gender-based violence story pretty well. She wanted to say something. Is there anyone else I'm looking out who wants to say what stood out for them? Anyone? Okay, so let's have Shiki, then we can all transition to the other side.
Hi, everyone. What stood out for me was that there's no specific face to people who have undergone gender-based violence of any sort of kind. They don't look a particular way. It could be anyone from any background, from any race, ethnic, like religion. It could be anyone. And sometimes when people go through something as traumatic as that, they end up blaming themselves, and so they put on this mask. And that's why you'll see in most of these photos, we have really nice makeup on, but you can also see the scars and the bruises. Most of the time, you won't see those scars on people that have gone through this. You won't see those bruises on people that have gone through this. So just a reminder to be kind, just a reminder to be aware that this is something that could happen to anyone. As I say, there's no specific face. It doesn't happen to only specific people. I could be the victim next. Your neighbor, your friend could be the victim next. So just reminding ourselves that as humans, we are a community and that we should come together to take care of each other, because at the end of the day, we have each other.
Yes, please. Yes, you can. Thank you so much. Please. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I didn't even see your hand, my dear. Thank you so much. One of our fantastic models as well. Where is, yes, the image there, right? One of our fantastic models. What stood out for you and why?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Catherine Siokau, and as a woman, a young woman, and a person living with disability, when it comes to GBV, there's a lot, especially when that is a double tragedy for me. Why? I'm a woman. The second, it's a young woman with disability. In just the concluded general election, I vied as a member of County Assembly in Machakos County, Yata constituency, and we were 11 candidates. I was the only woman, the only youth, and the only person with disability. And my counterparts, who are my opponents, the men, they were like, mbona mnataka kupatia umwana udem kiti, udem hajaolewa? Why do you want this girl to be a leader? She doesn't have a home. She doesn't have a family. Where will you be going to see her? So you find there's a lot of discrimination to young women, especially in the political spaces. And that's why, as a young woman, I aspire a lot when that time will come that we will not have any challenges for ourselves, and when we'll be given the opportunity to vie and to be counted, not because we are women, but because we are capable of being leaders, just like our counterparts who are men. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for highlighting very pertinent issues. And I'm being told some of us haven't listened. If you'd like to listen to the stories, please feel free to listen to the testimonials that we have in this particular corner. We're trying to fix a quick hitch with the documentary. Adele, do you want to weigh in as well?
Hi, everyone. My name is Adele Onyango, a very good friend of Bina's. I'm so proud of her. I think the work that her and her team do is so inspiring. And I think I was at one of the brainstorms for this exhibition. So to see it come to fruition is just so wonderful. So first and foremost, I just want to say kudos to the entire team that worked on this. I don't really want to call them models. I can see Dennis, who's just amazing. It's just humans who are using themselves and their art for a bigger cause, and that's really powerful. I think my only ask of you is just to be an active citizen. This is not a fight only for us survivors. It's a fight across the board. If you're human and you are of sound mind, you can tell that when it comes to gender-based violence, it's something that shouldn't be happening. Consent is not something that is completely impossible to understand. I think people just choose not to understand it because it inconveniences them. So the question is, which side will you stand on? Will you actually help us fight? Will you use your spaces? We're all influential in various spaces. Will you step into those spaces and champion change when it comes to ending sexual violence? Or will you be silent? To the men, you definitely have more privilege than us. What are you using your privilege for? Are you just sitting silently and enjoying the fruits of that privilege, or are you using your voice and that privilege to join us in pushing for an end to sexual violence? And honestly, it doesn't require you to do something as grand as, chaining yourself to parliament doors or things like that. I think a huge change is made by collective small change. And so it could be you calling out your friends who are perpetrators of rape culture, right? And these rapists belong to families, they belong to friend circles, they belong to communities. So how's about you start whenever you see problematic behavior, call it out then. And it could be you reading up on what in the world is rape culture. What is that? A basic Google search will help you do that. It could be you see something in the news around sexual violence and you use your social media platforms to say, hey, this is not right. So it's really about being an active citizen. The fight is not only for survivors. I think I'm very jaded right now where I'm just like, oh, you guys have left it to survivors and I'm a bit tired. It's a fight that every human should be participating in, and men, because you do have a privilege. Don't just enjoy the fruits of it, use it for something bigger than yourself. And then, congratulations, again, for using, talent, faces, art, creativity to push for an end to sexual violence. Some people may not understand stories, they may not understand words, they may not understand the NGO talk of 1 and 3 and all of that, but they could understand images. And so this is very powerful. I'm very, very proud of you and your team.
You gonna my one side, you make me give number. Me no feel look and pass. She give me eye contact. Oh baby, Jack, come on. Oh baby, Jack, give me this your love. Me I go show you love as long as you know it need you.
Hi guys. Hi guys. Yeah. Before I start my piece, I just want to issue a trigger warning because it contains stories of actual incidences of sexual assault. And the reason I chose to approach this piece in this way is because I feel like sexual assault is used as a weapon. Rwanda genocide, 1994. During the conflict, Hutu extremists released hundreds of patients from hospitals suffering from HIV and AIDS and formed them into rape squads. Their mission was to rape Tutsi women and infect them with HIV and AIDS, causing a slow and miserable death. Democratic Republic of Congo, characterized as the rape capital of the world. One of the men during an interview said, and I quote, "If we see girls, it's our right. We can violate them as we please. Central African Republic, women who had been raped by militiamen were disowned by their husbands and taken as sex slaves because of this reason. That if your wife has slept with someone else, then they belong to that other person. And it doesn't matter if it was willing or not. Rape is all about power than it is about sex." Afghanistan. One of the special ways of getting information from suspected terrorists, allegedly, was by raping them or forcing the captives to rape each other at gunpoint. Prison. When a new inmate comes in, the big boys have to show the little boys who the real boss is by raping them over and over again until they get the point. Ethiopia. There was a woman who wanted to further her education and she was gang raped publicly to remind her where her true place is. Under a man, Matare, a 6-month-old baby was raped by father while mother had gone to the shop to buy groceries. Bungoma, an 86-year-old woman, is raped every day by at least 3 assailants. The ages of these assailants are ranging from teenagers to around 50 years. And this is happening with the full knowledge of her neighbors. And one of them had this to say, "Someone, please come and take her because we don't know what to do with her anymore." At that point, she had turned from human to burden. Rape is all about power than it is about sex. It's one of the weapons that does not discriminate, does not care if you're black, white, man, or woman, because it will find you where you are, arms wide open, ready for you. Rape is all about power than it is about sex. And to prove this, of all the examples I have stated above, none have been about the victim's length of skirt or their sexiness thereof, because rape is all about power and has nothing to do with sex. This is for the trans women killed, for the rape victims shamed, for the daughters gone, for the child whose innocence is lost, for the voices that will never be heard, will never be sung, will never be praised, lifted or raised, will never be anything, for the voices that have been forced into silence, that have been forced into silence. We have been forced into silence, been forced into silence, forced into silence, silence. Rape is all about power than it is about sex. Thank you.
Let's appreciate Shiki again. I could never even construct a paragraph that creatively. Shiki, thank you so much, even for the causes that you fight for. It means a lot. Thank you for using your voice and your power to stand up for justice. Asante sana. I think right about now we are ready. Are we? So let's appreciate our storytellers again. So right about now, I just want to get quick reactions, your thoughts or your feelings, or what more you think we need to do. And then we also have cards that are circulating. Please share your thoughts with us. It means a lot to us in terms of also improving the work that we do, but more importantly, how we can work on holistic support when we do this work. Quick reactions?
Hi guys, my name is Ruto Mushalet. I was the first female governor, University of Nairobi. And when it comes to student leadership, man,
It's hectic. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, I don't know about other universities, but what I can tell you from the University of Nairobi, it was problematic. I remember calling my ma every single night. I'm like, Ma, I'm quitting this thing. My ma will tell me, okay, continue, but again she'll be like, kama ni ngumu hivi, just leave it. When I first won, I remember being on the line to go and get sworn in, and the person who was actually doing it asked me, no, I've called for governors. I'm a governor. How did you become a governor? That's somebody from the administration, because it's surprisingly so weird for a lady to actually become a governor. I remember one time I'm walking around school, then I hear my opponent saying, we cannot let a prostitute lead the school. And it was so, okay, mara ya kwanza I'm like, a prostitute. Okay, what next? A twerker. They called me a twerker. That one I can say, okay, everyone twerks, it's okay. But a prostitute, that was overboard. It was so overboard. And with me, I was cautious on my sense of style, my sense of fashion and everything. I had a piercing here, I had a half hair, and I still want to become a student leader, and I want to become a chair lady for the first time in the University of Nairobi. Apparently, I won. And getting from her story, my name is Ruto Wairino. I have a Kikuyu sense in me and I have a Kalenjin sense in me. I remember being taken to all those tribes, telling them vote for me. And one of the tribes that I actually come from told me, bring your birth certificate, we need to prove if you're one of us. And they called my mom, and I'm like, Mom, and my mom, okay, we are a bit prejudiced by this tribal thing. So it comes back from the roots. And me listening to it, I wanted to quit, but I never really actually quit. It's not easy. It's not easy as people actually think. I actually knew how to run and jump windows. Because every time there's a bottle flying at you. And the bottom line thing about being a student leader, and a student leader who is a lady, the first thing, even when you're in government, if you fail, it's because you are a lady, not because there's obstacles and substances, not because of that. There's one time a student committed suicide in my school, and that time I had pressure. You have media calling you, they want you to talk and comment on something. You have the school administration, and you have the students. So the student wanted to strike, and I'm like, no, you cannot strike because somebody actually committed suicide. And the parents are like, we don't want this thing to go overboard, so keep quiet about it. It was so bad because I got, what can I say, cyberbullying, like defamation and everything. You know what I did? Sometimes you just have to be ruthless. I actually sent police officers to take those people who were talking vibaya, and they went to the police station. They were given handle straws. Because if you come out, there's nothing I can actually do. I cannot send goods on them. You cannot do anything. You are a lady. You cannot start fighting. There's one time a student is being beaten, mob justice, serious mob justice, and you actually see this student is going to die. What are you going to do? You actually take a dozy, rush to the police station to come and bring the police officers to remove them, because if you are a lady, you will be beaten there. So it's a bit challenging. It's not that easy. And the majority, even from the administration, most people used to ask me, Charlotte, how did you become a governor in this campus? It's hard. In a collection of governors, like in the University of Nairobi, we have 12 campuses. We only had 2 female governors and the rest were male. Sometimes we'll be talking about a lot of things, wanasahau. They'll be like, how you do things. They don't even remember that some topics are actually gender sensitive. So I'm glad for people like Badili, because in the University of Nairobi, we used to think it's normal for a lady to be abused by goods. We used to think it's normal for you to be chased by bottles. But when such talks come, you don't have to pass through that. Although it shapes you a little bit to become a little bit stronger, because we actually joined national politics. And it was a bit sharp for us, but you don't actually need that all bullying. Because majority of my friends never came out through it. Some of them are still depressed till today. So I'm glad we can have such talks. I'm glad if ladies in the universities are actually coming up, they can go through the same process. We never found it, but we are happy to see our predecessors doing it. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate Charlotte.
And of course, the landscape is changing because we have the amended Universities Act that has even changed how politics is being done currently. And not everyone can vote at the university. I think we're now using the electoral college system currently, and I know it was contested in Parliament. It's still an ongoing conversation to repeal it. But we're still doing the much we can to ensure that it's safe. And as much as perhaps we are doing a lot to ensure that people are not affected when it comes to even having to hire goons, how do we curb the cyberbullying? Because then now it has moved to the online space. How do we curb the cyberbullying especially?
Thank you. My name is Anna. I'm a student leader in Kenyatta University. So my reaction about all this is, we as ladies, sometimes we're not getting into these bigger positions because I'm vying for president because I'm a woman. I want this vote because I'm a woman. You're going there just because you're fighting for the seat, because I'm vying for presidency because KU has never had a female president. Is that the notion? Is that the mentality? I think that is why most of us will not getting these seats. Because you're going there, you want to be vulnerable, you want to look weak, you want to seem weak, so you want to get these seats as a result of favors. So that is one of the reasons as to why we as women, as student leaders and female campuses, we're not getting these top seats. We're leaving them to men. If I pose a quick question, what's the difference between a man and a woman? What's the difference between me and him? What's the difference? Any response? What could be the difference between me and him, yes?
First difference is with genders. Yeah. Two, we have long lived in a society where men have been well appreciated, taken as leaders even if they are not capable, and women have been left at a feminine, discriminating position. So you as a woman, whether qualified or not, you stand up, you want to run for position. Still the patriarchal context comes into bringing you down. Being a woman, your space is in being submissive to a man being capable than you, and that gives him a higher chance of being taken, appointed, or elected than you as a woman. So if your strategy is playing the vulnerable part, go for it. It works for us. It has put us in places. No big deal. I don't see a big deal playing a woman to be elected. I'll play it if it has to put me in that space where I can advocate fairly for women voices. That's my take.
So we should play vulnerable to get these seats?
Yes. Very nice discussion.
Oh, okay. That's what's for an argument.
Okay, so first of all, it was amazing. It's so insightful. I think I haven't had an opportunity to sit and hear from student leaders, and particularly those identifying as women. And so there's so many thoughts in my head, but so I'll start with the conversation that's happening. I don't think vulnerability or emotions are a weakness. I believe they are a strength. I believe that actually makes a really good leader to be able to be in touch with your own emotions, because then you're able to connect and empathize with the people who you're leading. Yes, policies are important, but there's human beings who are breathing and feeling behind that. So if you experience something as a leader that makes you feel emotional, I think it's okay to communicate that. I've never run in politics, but I know it's a game of strategy. And if there is a situation where that is a strategy, I don't know, then perhaps that's okay. I think there's already so much pressure for female leaders that we mustn't add the pressure of you're representing all women. You're really not, you know? So there must be space for you to be an individual, whatever that looks like for you. And then the third thing is just also, we need to understand that we're participating both in campus elections and in national campus politics and national politics in an intentionally broken system. So even if you do certain things, it's like going to the gym, right? And you have all of these muscles, right? But then when you come into wrestling or whatever, you're playing in a space where people are much bigger than you, or you now have to fight with like heavier weights holding you down, no matter how much muscle you build, if that system is biased or is broken, you will never make any movement, right? So then we have to move the conversation to, yes, have more female representatives, but also what needs to change in the structural system so the environment is a bit more safe. And I think with campus politics, what we keep acting like doesn't happen is there is interference by national politics, right? And so, and for years, so if you sit down with people who went to uni, I have a cousin who was telling me how Patni brought for them DSTV in UN. I mean, what the hell? And how, I can't remember which politician would reward them with chicken, because you know campus, like, things are thick when it comes to eating, right? And so that interference is there, we act like it's not, and it already makes campus politics a dirty game from the jump. So how do we separate the two, and how do we call out the structural issues within the... And then honestly, as women, I think we need to build communities, and intentional communities. So there's a community that gasses you up when you're broken, and like kind of heals you, and then there's communities that tells you, hey, here's a strategy. So even I feel like the two of you, I don't think you're from the same university. You can build a community together, you know, even if you have different points. I think we need to be more intentional about our communities and even move away from mentorship and create a community that's not only campus leaders, but also national female leaders, because they're going through the same crap as well, right? And then we become strategic about it and not oblivious to the fact that we're playing in a very broken game, an already dirty game, in a super broken ecosystem, you know? So those are just my 2 cents.
It's a safe space, your thoughts are valid, you know, because we also learn, relearn, and unlearn because of the spaces that we sit in, right? So it's okay, right?
So we want to empower the young girls, right? We want to empower our sisters, we want to empower the young siblings. So if I'm standing to buy because I'm a woman, I'm standing to buy for this presidential seat and telling the electorate that vote for me because I'm a woman. What will the younger generation be coming up with? They'll come with the same strategies. So are we going to act vulnerable? Are we going to present ourselves as the weak gender? Yeah? So that is what I'm saying. We cannot act vulnerable when we are looking for these seats. Because there are people who are looking after us, there are people who are coming after us. So the moment we are activating for the girl child, then the moment we bring that by allowing this acting vulnerable, we're making the society more patriarchal. We're not going to have terms whereby we're going to have female in these spaces. That is my argument.
First of all, there is nothing wrong with being a woman. There is absolutely nothing wrong for wanting to vie for a seat because I am a woman, because when I vie as a woman, it means I'm representing women, which is the majority of population in this country. So when I stand there and I say, vote for me as a woman, it means every issue that affects women is what I'm standing there on that platform to ask for. So if I'm standing on that platform and I'm saying, I vote for me because I'm a woman, I could be, just by being a woman, I could just stand on that platform and say, because girls don't have parents. That is reason enough for me to be elected.
What about in a situation whereby there is both female and male?
Yes, because let me tell you, we live in a patriarchal society that says that we men are naturally leaders. We live in a society where I have to conform and to forget about my femininity and my womanhood and act and behave like a man so that I can be seen and validated. I want to stand as a woman in all my womanhood and ask for that seat because that is who I am. Stand in your femininity. And because let me tell you, not being vulnerable has not won a seat anyway. Not crying has not made women not win seats. I am going to cry if I need to cry. I am going to show my vulnerability if I need to. Because us acting like we are men has not given us any political threshold. Because women, when we get into places of power, we need to start behaving like the patriarchs themselves, and we forget who we are and what made us get into those seats. So do not forget who you are. Because when you stand there, you're not just advocating for yourself, and even the people who are looking at you, we keep on saying all the time, men are not as a woman, I'll not be in touch with my emotions because it makes me appear weak. But then when do we have emotions? Everything has a place for itself. We just need to know how to use it and to use it appropriately. So learn to not look at your womanhood as a disadvantage and look at it as who you are and stand in that power. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't get your name. I didn't get your name? Anna. I see where you're coming from. And it's pretty much what we're talking about here, that for you it ends up being a way for you to survive and be safe in certain spaces if you behave like a man. So we have to talk about what we have to do sometimes to be safe or to succeed. So there's that element. However, vulnerability, again, as Adele said, does not denote weakness. So here's my take. Male leadership has good and bad, and that's all we've known for centuries. Now, the argument, so female leadership does not mean it's good only, and that's maybe what I'm kind of getting from you, that watch me as a woman because then it will be a better leadership. And for me, that argument doesn't stand. What we need to advocate for is we can't have one type of leadership century in, century out. There's another type of leadership brought about by females and female representing, and in there's vulnerability, empathy. There's a different type of leadership, but in that female leadership space, there are still good and bad leaders. So one day we get to the place where you stand because you're a leader, not because you're male or female, and that day hasn't come yet though, however, until we show them what female leadership looks like, until it's at par with what we know as quote-unquote leadership. So the day we have an equal power and we say, oh, male leadership looks like this and female leadership equally looks like this, that's the day we eliminate the gender and now we're just looking for leaders. But we're so far from there, and the thing we have to fight and put in place right now is to show what female leadership looks like. And if it's vulnerable, which MP is this when they were doing there was a day, I think Aisha Juma cried, and I love this lady and always forget her name. She's the MP she was on the vetting committee. She also cried when she asked Kindiki about, and it was one day last week, 2 women cried on TV, and someone immediately said, oh my goodness, what is this? And I said, that is fashion. Tears are not just tears of sadness. That's a woman or a leader feeling passionate about young people dying in her constituency. Her body has reacted in that way. So we need to see so much of that for us to understand this is what female leadership looks like. We appreciate it. And then one day, hopefully, soon, in our lifetime, we'll just say, we're just looking for leaders. But we're so far from there. However, back to my first point, if you're in and it's a catch-22, if you're in a space where you feel you won't be safe by projecting a certain, and you need to get out of that space, then by all means do what you need. As you said, it's a strategy. If it's a strategy to be who you are, that's fine. If it's a strategy to be who they think they want you to be, or you to get what you need, I agree, just do what you have to do.
I'll just take the last few, and for me, even I'm sitting here and soaking in this conversation, and I think Akina Shiki can even share. When we have our initial conversations in the university space, let me tell you, you'll be shocked, okay? By just even the rawness of how even other young women cannot also connect how politics affects them in their day-to-day lives. So for me, I always take it as a learning opportunity. Like there's so much work to do. There's so much work to do. Like literally, the first time we had like a Zoom call to just figure out what we're going to do, we had a few women influential, and when we say influential, it's not just influential in the political sense. It can be someone who's even a fashion influencer in the university. It can be someone who's just, even in the engineering field, but like they have a voice, right? And when you try and dissect these matters of leadership, politics, feminism, how does that manifest? What does that even mean? You'll be amazed. So I think this is just to show like there's so much work for us to do. Are you going to comment on something? Okay.
I want to first acknowledge Charlotte here. We understand University of Nairobi politics and its dynamics. I have been a participant, and she has emerged a winner. She ran for UNSA presidency. I didn't hear her talk about that, even though she did not make it. But we celebrate that effort that you ran, and of course we currently have a female president, the second female president in University of Nairobi. And these efforts are things we started advocating for in Waswa since 2015 when I joined, looking at the gaps. And I also acknowledge comments by Adele that we need to create a community of women who advocate for other women, who support other women, who work and journey with other women who want to pursue, so that it's not a Mary-only affair. When Mary graduates, it goes with Mary outside her corporate society. But if we have a community where we learn, it started from campus and it's happening in the national space, and we can address it from the roots at the university and even come up with solutions. And we applaud our policymakers who are women. They have a role to play in the spaces they are to ensure that even in our small spaces at the university, politics is safe for women. Women are protected. And if the policy gaps, for example, we don't have a sexual harassment policy for university, that is something they can take in their spaces to ensure sexual and gender-based violence issues within the university space is cut, so it doesn't grow and we start solving it from the top. Our government is a bottom-up, so issues should be addressed from the bottom. Issues of SGBV from the family level, from the primary school level, from university level, going up. And that is the approach. And finally, I want just to comment and appreciate Badili Africa for raising our voices and sharing our stories. Because until it is out there and it's known that it's an issue, it cannot be addressed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here in this space. I am a politician. I vied in the last general election, and I just want to add my voice to the how vulnerable should you play. And I want to say that a woman is all-sided. It came a point where I will unleash both sides. When it calls for vulnerability, I will play that. I will cry. When it calls for leader tigress, I would do that. And I would dress accordingly, depending on the setup. If I know I'm going to a place for campaigns where I am likely to face violence, I would dress in my jeans, in my sports shoes, and my shirt. At that time, I would be a lion or a lioness. When it calls for that care and apathy and all that, I will dress in my long dress and I will carry a scarf and I will cry with them. So the joy of a woman is being all-sided. Unleash what works for you. Unleash what works for you today and tomorrow. Unleash it differently if it works for you. We will not hide our emotions. We will cry and we will fight, because women, we must get into that leadership spot. And currently, that's what we are advocating for in the space that I am in. Thank you so much.
So the one thing that I'm learning now, and I think it's so beautiful whenever I come for Badili Africa things, is that as a woman, you don't have to look a certain way to talk about important issues. And I think when, I didn't get your name, but the governor, yeah, when you spoke about you had your hair in a certain way, you had your piercings, your tattoos, I'm actually now intentionally going into rooms that are like serious and very, you know, I'm not hiding my tattoos, I'm not doing anything, because I'm like, you can be a woman and talk about politics, etc., and still be creatively inclined and want to dress a certain way or pursue different arts or look a certain way. And so if you can, in an individual level, as all the women here, start unlocking that in your head, that you don't have to become a certain way, that will be very great, because we didn't grow up in a vacuum. You know, we are also products of patriarchy, so you have to check yourself all the time and ask yourself, am I doing things a certain way because that's how I've been conditioned to, or that's what I want to do? The last thing is that some things in campus are not normal, and I just feel like, why have we said they're normal? So for example, sorry I'll bring up UN a lot, but like, I've been to UN for a conversation on ending sexual violence, and it was someone in the Sonu, a lady who had organized it. And when we went through security searches, everything, we got into the room, and we were about to start, and these students who resembled goons come in and surround this tiny girl, and they say, you've not paid us ABCD, so this is not going to work. And I said, okay, we're here talking about violence against women, and my goodness, it has just brought its legs to us, you know? And I was like, wait, but we were searched by security 10 steps away. Why are they just basking in the sun as this is happening? And these are students. Like, we're not in a marketplace somewhere where thieves have come. We are in a university, you know? And I think it starts from there, because I remember people saying, oh no, this is just how Nairobi Uni is, or University of Nairobi is. And I was like, no, that is not normal. This is a university. These are students, okay? We're not, again, in the middle of nowhere where we can be ambushed. Why are students ambushing us? And later on in the conversation, they came in and they did the same thing, they disrupted, and it was an issue of they were not paid. And I was like, this is not normal. And so we normalize things that are just absurd. Why do you have to pay students groups a bribe to be able to have conversations that matter? And if we can also start talking about how do we dismantle that and make our universities actual universities and not just crazy places, you know, that is not normal. So if I'm really open to lend my voice to that, because I think if you're a student and you're in university, you should have a normal university experience. You should not be interacting with goons, you know? So yeah, I'm just throwing that out there. Like, however I can help towards that cause, like, I'm very willing.
Starting all the way from university, then ends up in national politics. There's a lot to be done, and we do our best, even in a restrictive environment, whether it's resource restrictions or legal restrictions. I come from FORAPC, which is a Swedish organization working in 70 countries globally. I'm representing the regional manager. I have a team here, and we are very supportive of our partners. We work in Eastern and Southern Africa, providing resources for grassroots movements, organizations to be able to do what they do. And yes, we celebrate with them. We put them at the forefront of this work. They are kind of what we say, they are frontline change makers. And they experience a lot of problems. We are trying to be innovative even with our type of funding to provide relief. When we're talking about mental wellness, resources that traditionally donors don't give. They want you to deliver outcome one, but they don't think about the mental wellness of grassroots movement and change makers. And these are conversations that's going on. And I think we are seeing a lot, especially with the foundations, changing their perception about what programming is all about, and not forgetting those who are the frontline fighting. And I remember the remarks of Dina on how expensive it is to run for political campaigns. I'm happy that you're saying that Nairobi University is trying to do something about elections. And if we fight for that and if it works, it's a case study for national politics, where you don't have to, what were the figures that are being given, that you have 15 million to run for MP. X million to run for MCA. You know, so it's quite interesting, you know, having spaces like this. We now need to move them into the bigger audiences. Having these conversations in the University of Nairobi with the goons. I don't know how we will deal with the goons thing, but they need to also listen. They need to also hear about all these experiences. We need to have those conversations in those spaces, and we are happy to support you as you move on with this journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now to the closing bit. I think for me, asanteni sana 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 for me, because I'm not going to be on stage again. I just want to thank everyone, and we're going to have another vote of thanks. But help me welcome Maureen from Badili Africa.
Thank you very much, Bina. My name is Maureen. I serve at Badili Africa. And just in a bid for us to find inclusive solutions to how we are going to sort of tackle SGBV, and especially in university spaces, we put out a call for essays for university students to just sort of articulate their experiences with SGBV, and also find solutions to the ills that they see in the universities, to highlight some of the challenges they have, you know, when accessing justice, and also service from their service providers. When you talk about the deans, the nurses, the security systems, and the whole support system that you know, it's in school. So we put out a call for essays, and we invited students. You know, we put them into categories. We had students in between the ages of 20 to 24. We had 25 up until the ages of 29, and now that is a sort of a different cohort, because now we expected that people from this cohort, from the 25 to 29, are people who are either going back to school to do their, you know, their masters or their PhDs in schools. So we have various categories, and from them we were able to get, I think, more than 100 submissions for the essays, and we were able to narrow it down to 3 essays that sort of articulated, you know, the experiences with SGBV, and also suggested solutions that we as Badili Africa can be able to amplify, and also the partners that we are working with can be able to look into some of the solutions that they have articulated, and we see then how we can be able to help them be able to scale up this initiative. So before I call them on stage, we have them here. I'd want to call another awesome Maureen to stage. She's also our partner in this project, so that she can be able to help us award the winners that we have for the essays. Karibu sana Maureen.
As we wait for them to come on stage, I think it's important to appreciate each and every one who submitted their essay. I think it takes a lot of courage to share your story, regardless of how that experience came to you. Some good, some bad, some leave us with scars, some haunt us for life, some put us in a space where you're not sure if sharing your story was the right thing to do. So I think for those who didn't even make it to have their essay published or make it into the documentary, I think it's important to acknowledge that it took a lot of strength and bravery to put yourself in a position to relive that experience again, and to take it a step further to share it with the world, because this information is going to be immortalized. As we keep saying, the internet never forgets. Books move around, documentaries get shared, stories get passed on. So it's something that we have to, I think, remember, even as we acknowledge those who are able to get their stories published in some way, shape, or form. And it's not just for us, it's to serve the purpose of those who are looking up to them, people who are thinking of being a leader in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to be in school, it doesn't have to be in the political space. It could be just in your home, in your community, in your friendship circle, in the workplace. That leadership doesn't look the same, and I think it's partly the discussion that we were having earlier. There's no one face to leadership, and I think we need to share the notion that
leadership has to be packaged or presented in a certain way for it to qualify as leadership. So in sharing their stories, they are leaders in their own right. They are setting the pace or creating the opportunities for others to see themselves in them maybe 5, 10, 15 years from now. Yeah, so I think it's important to acknowledge everyone who contributed towards the project, including the stories that we've listened to, the testimonials, those that have come into the documentary, those that will go into the publication on the blog. Yeah.
By no particular order, I'd like to welcome Susie, Caroline, and Marceline. And I think we'll just be able to take... Oh yeah, we make the music then. And then maybe we can just give, feel free to just come in front, Susie, Marceline, so that we can just give you a minute to maybe just share with us your reflections, and then, yeah.
My name is Marcelina Masaka. I am a third year student at Technical University of Kenya. I'm also a blogger in the school, the only female blogger, and sexual and gender-based violence usually perpetrates itself for a very long time, especially during elections. Like right now, we're in the electioneering period, and many women, they get sexually harassed, and when I try to speak out, I'm told nyamaza or ni politics, ni siasa. And I love that this forum is here, this session, where I'm also getting ideas on how to like curb that, because as the only female blogger currently in the school, I don't have much support from like other women or anything, or other women that I can look up to in the school to help me curb that. But yeah, I'm grateful for this event because I was also thinking of starting an initiative which will protect the women in the Technical University of Kenya from sexual harassment.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Okay, my name is Susie Wanyumba. I am a third year currently at the University of Nairobi. I take Bachelor of Science in Microbiology and Biotechnology. Due to unavoidable circumstances, I came a bit late, but I'm so glad to be here, and thank you so much for this initiative.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Caroline Gaturi from Masai Mara University, Narok. Okay, I also came a bit late, but yeah, earlier than her. Yeah. Yeah, so for me, my article, I wrote it from my friend's perspective, from her point of view, because she was a victim of STBV. So it was really something personal somehow, because she was a really close friend and she had to drop out of school. She had to, like completely. Yeah, so I'm very grateful and thank you guys. You're really doing a good job, and yeah, I'm proud to be part of this team.
One of them. Columbia body name I want to make my mind a rest. You better make a day with you, cause it's so low show than they cost. Baby turn around, make a come on top. Be like I take it by now. You like a boss like Kana. Show to me love, I'm
It takes a whole team to do this work. So the best we could ask you to do is go share with someone. If you've learned something, go share with someone. If we are committed like that, we will change the world. So we'd like to give a vote of thanks to the partners and the donors who have supported Badili Africa. We'd like to thank the board of Badili Africa. We'd like to thank the student leaders and all the partners who work with Badili Africa. And if you're any other member outside this, we also would like to thank you.
Show to me love, Amaya.